Hey, what is up ladies and gentlemen, I'm Duffy Duck here once again, and I'm back for some more of the Maxi Toys videos. And ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to more Let's Play of Kirby Superstar, aka Kirby's Fun Pack, aka Kirby of the Stars Super Deluxe for the Super Nintendo / Super Famicom. So last time we actually did tackle through the ending portion of Milky Way Wishes and beat the likes of Marks at the very end because he's the one he betrayed us all after he's responsible for all this villain. And today for this episode is in fact that we're moving on into the true finale of the entirety of Kirby Superstar Let's Play. See Fernando, we're going to be tackling through the arena now. See Fernando, this is what happens if you manage to unlock this particular game, the arena, which by the forms of how the fact that the final challenge, in his toughest battle yet, the Pink Wonder faces his strong enemies. So, much like how it does in Milky Way Wishes, the difficulty stars rating department is still 5, so even though this expecting this might be the hardest games of the bunch, but even though that, yeah, we're about to get this thing started right there. And after that, I might as well showcase off Megaton Punch and Samurai Kirby at the very end as well. So just in case, I'll show those two off. See, Fernando, let's get started with the arena. So, this might actually be one of the hardest modes of the game, because I'll get into more details about this sooner or later. So anyways, let's get started. Alright, you probably realized about something, is that I recently managed to get my jump cuts right there. It's because, well, not only does this game as usually be the last of the majority of the sub-games in Kirby Superstar itself on the Super Nintendo, except on the DS, because in the DS version actually expand upon more sub-games on through for those kinds of stuff. But basically, this is how the arena does. Basically, all I have to do is like, you know, think of like the ones in versus boss mode in both Kirby's Adventure and Kirby's Dream Land 2, except unlike in those two games, that normally it's entirely optional if you want to able to see what the actual reward after doing so. But in this game, it requires you to able to actually go for 100% completion, because actually expected for the arena is basically just endurance run to able to battle as many bosses as we can from the past games, but in forms of Kirby Superstar itself, like ranging from Spring Breeze all the way up to Milky Way Wishes. So, you know, the only exception being is the forms of Gourmet the Race, because to simply put, that game does not count as far as boss battles wise, because, you know, you simply race against with King Dedede for not only just race to the finish syndrome, but also judging by the fact that we need to gobble as many food as we can. So, yeah, I can't believe we're actually breezing for this game quite ridiculously fast, even for the actual length of the actual parts themselves. And sadly, my ally sadly dies now, so even though that's a little bit too much upsetting. But even though that, the first boss we're going to be tackling through at this point is Computer Virus. Now, this boss won't be as bad by the likes of using the yo-yo, but the ones you do need to be very careful of, and this is by far the hardest part of the Computer Virus actually, and that was the forms of faced off against with the Red Dragon itself, because first off, his defense is gone ridiculously high, and also his attacks are really devastating by the looks of it though. And not to mention though, you need to be right on with that specific pattern to the actual Red Dragon. But even then, I found that to be quite the hardest part of the fight. But even then, as long as you're able to deal out with the Computer Virus, then it's not too bad, I don't think. So anyways, next up we have is Lo 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 and Lo Lo La. We haven't saw these two duos for ever since, well, Spring Breeze, pretty much. Because even then, much like Krakow and especially King Dedede, and, well, we've already saw Wispy Woods ever since, you know, Revenge of Meta Knight, and in addition to the new counterpart, Twin Woods, which is basically the twin version of Wispy Woods, which is does the exact same thing as each other. Kinda like how it does it in Double Task Boss Fight in Donkey Kong Jungle Beat for the Nintendo GameCube and Nintendo Wii, so I just want to clarify that right about now. As we expected with this arena game right there is the fact that, well, we're gonna have to tackle through, I'm assuming we need to tackle through 20 bosses in total, which even though that might sound a lot, which even though it might as well does, because even though this is gonna be a long endurance run through for this point, folks, because as you expected, the arena itself is actually really dang hard, because even though that, first off, you only have like one chance before you're able to actually go through every single bosses within one single playthrough. But if you manage to run out of your health just in time, chances are you're able to actually get kicked out of the arena, or you have to do the entire portion of the game again, which even then though, this is by far the hardest modes of the game, even for the hardest games of the bunch in the forms of Kirby Superstar. Not only for the Super Nintendo version, but also want to point things out for the DS version as well, because I managed to, the only point I've actually got stuck into in the forms of Kirby Superstar Ultra for the DS, and that's the forms of I've actually got stuck on the arena for the longest amount of time, after 10 years or so. Because of that though, one major gripe I have with the forms of the DS version I might consider this is because, one thing it makes Super Nintendo so good, by the looks of how the fact that in main canon number 2 boss, that normally you take down the actual cannon so easily due to how the fact that you can able to hit him at the very edge of the actual cannon, or in this case a twin cannon, which even then that works just fine. But even then though, on the DS version on the other hand, they managed to fix it, and let's just say right now, I wasn't keen on fixing things, because, well, first off, that I got so wrecked so easily on that main canon number 2 boss in the DS version, but not so much on the Super Nintendo version, because you can just simply able to hit off the edge and then just simply use your yo-yo ability and or whatever, then you can simply deal this twice as many damage as you like to will be. So, this next boss, we have Dyna Blade, and she might be a little bit difficult in this particular mode because again, if you're not paying attention to her attacks, well, unless if you let your ally get grabbed by the forms of her claws and all that stuff, you might be fine for the most part. Just don't get caught by her claws, just in case you don't want to get hurt by her so easily like that. So, I think that pretty much does it for her, and this will actually be the final time we're going to be seeing her, not until when, you know, Kirby right back at ya anime now starts to shine. So even then, that makes it pretty obvious with that one point or another. So, off to the next boss in this particular arena itself, but in forms of, speaking of main canon number 2, here it is right here. So anyways, let's go ahead and just get started right there. I've got my companion, but in forms of Gim, but in forms of the yo-yo copy ability. So, yeah, this is what I usually does whenever I decide to perform that strategy, is that I've normally tried able to do that strategy, because this strategy is really easy, because you're able to actually not get hit by the actual nozzle part of the actual cannon blaster, which even then, that might be sounds a little bit more unique with that, you know, strategy-wise. However, though, in the DS version, I wasn't really too thrilled about it, and that's the forms of they managed to fix that issue to make it a little bit more balanced, which even then, I would classify saying unbalanced, if I should say so, because again, I got so easily got wrecked on this fight on the forms of the DS version, but I need to get back into that actually. So even then, at the moment today, that I've managed to able to actually gone through 92% at least on the DS version of Kirby Superstar, which even then, or in this case Kirby Superstar Ultra, I should say. But even then, that's as far as I can really go for that, saying for that much, but even then, that's as far as I can tell for that point of view. So, now if you're probably wondering what's going on with these a whole bunch of jump cuts, it's because, as I mentioned to you guys earlier ago, that the arena itself is by far the hardest modes or the hardest games of the entirety of Kirby Superstar itself. Oh, there's Mario and Luigi again. Hello, brothers. And I believe there's also Toad in this particular cameo as well, which is also kind of awesome as well. Which even then, that makes it super cool and awesome, you know. Okay, so the best advice on the King DDD fight is by simply we need to keep on jumping and just keep on using the sword attack, so just in case you would able to deal twice as amount of damage towards King DDD. So even then, I've almost died right there, quite frankly though, but even then, every time when you actually finish the main fights themselves, normally you move on to the next. However though, you can't simply go into the correct spotting order. Instead, it's all randomized, until when it gets to the final boss, but in forms of marks, will be one exception, because it's always had to be the final foe you have to face. So even though that's the only thing you need to notice that. So, here we go, on to the mini-series of mini-boss fights right here. So even though it's very self-explanatory if we know what we're doing. So, naturally speaking, that since I've got my bomb with me, in addition to my companion by the forms of Blade Knight, as far as what the actual name is called now, because I just keep on forgetting about these all sorts of names actually, honestly. So anyways, now let's move on to Wispy Woods. Thankfully though, Wispy Woods is simply easier, because even then though, he doesn't do anything besides, you know, spit out projectiles and especially throw down apples into each other. So I think that's the only attack I can think of. So anyways, let's go ahead and beat the likes out of him. Come on, let's see if I can beat him. And huzzah! Well, not literally huzzah just yet, but now though anyway. Huh, I never thought about that actually. So next thought we have is Waddle Dee? Isn't that supposed to be a threat? Well, to be honest, not much of a threat. Simply he just goes wreck and that's it. You move on to the next boss. Oh, that was the most, really piece of joke of the actual fight. I mean, sure as it makes it pretty obvious with that 1 point. So anyways, next fight we have is, Krakow. And, yeah, that's why it usually goes here. So, today was actually forms of the 23rd of March, so you know what that means today is actually forms of how the fact of the release date of the forms of Detective Pikachu was now released today on the 3DS in the English version of that game now, and also in the same thing for how it does in Detective Pikachu Amiibo. And also tomorrow, after this Let's Play is finished, that My Little Pony Friendship is Magic Season 8 will be on its way tomorrow in Discovery Family, which, you know, kinda like how it does in the forms of back in during the likes of Season 5 when it all started off Discovery Family channel, until when it gets to the point until, not until when it gets to 2019 or something, because even then though, after all that Season 9 was going to be confirmed after all, but I don't know exactly for sure for Season 10, but even then we don't know exactly for sure just yet though, so how dare you hurt my partnership? How dare you, you mysterious looking monstrosity? And same applies for you, die, die, die. So naturally speaking of such though, is the fact that since that luckily though the Super Nintendo Classic Mini does have a save state system, which even though I will admit though right away though you might be considered for my criticism to actually think that you might consider this to be a cheating or something like that, but you know what? I just cannot help it for myself when it comes to able to doing with hardest modes throughout the majority of Kirby games these days. That one of these modes is actually forms of the boss rush that I've always attempted to save state on. But most of the time though, I don't have as many issues in the actual main gameplay of it. But unfortunately that cannot be the same applies with the boss rushes, because just like how it does it in the forms of Endurance Alley from Mario Party 6, that you have to go through the majority of 100 levels within just only one sorry I can't speak today, one run through of that particular mode. Even though, unlike how it does in the forms of Mario Party, the top 100, that usually you have to go through, I was classified for 97 minigames, except 100, because, you know, both Block Start, Stick and Spin, and especially noticeable with Dual Drop. What's he doing? He just moonwalks. What's going on? Anyways, the reactor is not that bad. You're just gonna have to simply guide the actual missile or reflective missile right back at the actual draw part at this weak spot. So even though now that's the only deal with the damage. So even though it's not too bad, not too shabby either. So pretty easy though too. So anyway though, what was I gonna say for this for a few moments ago? Oh yeah, yeah, during the likes of how the fact that well, I was classified for same for during the likes of Mario Party, the top 100s, because both Dual Drop, Block Star, and Stick and Spin does not count in the minigame islands just because they all just extra puzzle minigames of any sorts, but that's just how it is when it comes to able to deal with this censored edition. So, anyways, the next boss fight we have is a chameleon fight, which I will admit though, I'm actually going to be saving my maximum tomatoes until the final few boss battles left. So, naturally though, we're almost there towards the end. So, yeah, because I forgot to mention about this, is that among with how the fact that every time you beat the boss, you move on to the next boss or another, the arena itself can actually make you able to actually obtain 5 maximum tomatoes each time when you're actually able to move on to the next boss battle, or to simply just start the actual arena itself. So, that makes it very handy for you if you manage to keep on losing your health too many times. And again, this is when before the future Kirby games exist to actually feature that particular system. But even though, still really handy when it comes to health points. So, Okay, so the next boss fight right here is the forms of the heart of a Nova right there, which I'm all gonna have to equip the bomb copy ability, even though it might be kind of pointless to able to do that because the actual next boss fight right here is gonna be more focusing on Starship Kirby, because I can tell because if you manage to play the DS version, that normally for that copy ability is normally calls it Starship, because even then because you know the star is actually on the front part of the ship, and basically that's all it does. So basically, again, just destroy these little blast radius and then stuff like that, and so you're able to deal with the heart of the Nuva. So even then that way it deals out with it there. So not too shabby for the most part, I'm going to say, for this boss, because even then I can just simply beat this boss so easier now, because even though, unlike how it does in last time, I'm always gonna get instant KO'd by the forms of the last, you know, shifting blocks and all that stuff. I think that's the only thing I've always get, off-guarded from that. So anyways, 3 more boss fights left, so here we go with Fatty Whale first. So even though I can expect what's coming up next. I'm presuming next up after Fatty Whale, I can assuming it might actually be Heavy Lobster, because even now, one thing I should probably point things out right away though, this is my 4th attempt to do Anticipated for the arena, because let me tell you again, it's ridiculously hard. I think the hardest boss in the majority of the arena itself, it'll probably have to be like a chameleon boss fight in addition to the final boss in the game, Marks, of course, and also Fatty Whale sometimes, because again you do need to work on with the actual random pattern. And again, I do apologize if the flickeriness is still a thing because of the emulation of the Super Nintendo Classic Mini sometimes, or even especially noticeable with the between both of capture cards and the actual Super Nintendo Classic Mini sometimes. But I think that's how it usually becomes though, kind of thing about it though, really. So anyways, that's it for Fatty Whale. And let's move on to the last 2 bosses, starting with Heavy Lobster. So even though this might be the final time we're going to be seeing him, not until, you know, Kirby right back at jail will exist, along with, oh, wasn't going to confuse with this another boss fight that we've already faced. Oh yeah, that's right, it's the forms of Dino Blade. Or to be more specifically, we'll actually see the Heavy Lobster makes a return by the forms of, you know, Kirby Fight to the Finish in the actual 100th episode film, by the forms of the actual Kirby's animated series. But even then though, that is something related to a movie special, if anything else for that presidable, just to get to the conclusion to the actual animated series of Kirby, because even though that's normally Nightmare's always responsible for all that stuff, just like how it does in Kirby's Adventure or Kirby Nightmare in Dreamland for the Game Boy Advance. I'm gonna say that much now. So here we go folks, here's the final boss in the arena, by the forms of as you expected, it's Marks, obviously, because you know it's the final boss in the majority of Kirby Superstar, obviously. So let's see how this boss fight will actually plays out to be in this particular mode. But I'm going to tell you right now that he is by far the hardest boss in this particular mode. I'm going to tell you that right from the start. Because first off, that unlike the ones in Milky Way Wishes, is that you can't able to switch between these different copy abilities, so you always have to keep that current one at the moment. And secondly, is the fact that you can't able to actually return back to your copy abilities during the likes of the Milky Way Wishes. And plus, again, you need to be right on with the pattern system with this particular fight, especially, well, you don't have to worry about this too much because you do have a guard button this time, which even though that makes it a little bit more insufficient. Speaking of a guard button, I think I do have my major gripe I have with my DSi at the moment, is the fact that my L and R sometimes can get really stiff at one point. It's because I was really used to with the 3DS's shoulder buttons at this point in time, because normally they are simply easier to become clickable. However, on the other hand, during the likes of the DSi, it just makes it incredibly difficult to be able to actually just press between these 2 shoulder buttons, which are the L and R buttons, which even then I will admit though is a little bit too clunky for my liking. So anyways though, so let's go ahead and just deal out as many damage as the forms of Marks by itself. Hopefully he's almost down by one point or another. Come on, let's finish him off. Okay, so my companion will be down in any moment, so even now, there we go! Now we've pretty much done with the arena, and there goes my companion, so rest in peace. So there we go, and every time you beat the arena, it tells you you're the winner, and how much time you've spent on for that particular one run through. So I've spent about 12 minutes and 8 seconds and 12 milliseconds, or to be more specifically in my recording time, roughly 20 minutes maximum. So, after when you beat the arena, you get yourselves a music sound test, which even though simply put is basically kind of like how it does in Kirby's Dream Land 1 and 2, and especially Kirby's Adventure, but you're going to have to unlock music sound test mode after when you beat the extra game on that game. But in Kirby Superstar, in order to actually unlock the sound test of this game, is by simply put, we need to actually complete the arena game. So after we've done that, then basically that's all you can get for this point. So basically, much like how it does in its predecessors, you can then simply just listen to your favorite background music, and especially sound effects included. It's really hard to tell that which button you can able to actually play the music is actually the Y button, which is kind of bizarre choice for that department right there, unlike the DS remake that just simply goes to A button. But again, that's just probably just how the fact that how it usually goes for that point or another. So, and I believe that pretty much does it for this point right there. But even then though, it wasn't over just yet, because as I mentioned earlier, I will able to save Megaton Punch and Samurai Kirby for last, before we're able to actually conclude Kirby Superstar Let's Play, before we're able to move on to the next Kirby game in the lineup, but in forms of the Kirby Marathon, which you guys should know until next month. So, here's Megaton Punch. Pay attention to the power gauge and watch the pendulum. So you can actually play this game up to 2 players, but in forms of 1 player which is played by yourself, or play with a friend of you with 2-player modes, assuming if you actually get yourselves 2 controllers. Which thankfully the Super Nintendo Classic Mini does contain 2 controllers, which is quite frankly, unlike the NES Classic Mini. So, as you can tell, before you start the game off, you can select up to 3 different level difficulties. There's 1, 2, and 3. 1 is basically simply put easy mode, 2 is considerably normal mode, and level 3 is considerably hard mode. So basically, this is how Megaton Punch works. Basically, all I have to do is basically we need to actually do like 3 different methods of doing some Megaton Punch. Like for instance, the power gauge, like right here, the aiming cursor you need to be right on, and especially noticeable with the fireball icon, it means that it needs to be directly at the middle, so just in case you would able to actually claim yourself some victory, to able to actually conquer everything here. So, and as you expected, you have to tackle through those 3 opponents, and I can see Mario and Luigi again, in addition to Toad as well, including Bodo as well, and I believe that's actually based off from Super Mario Bros. 2 USA. I'm assuming this might be more likely consumption from that, even though it's kind of odd to actually bring out doppelganger versions of Mario and Luigi and Toad, and especially Bodo herself as well, but even though that's kind of weird. So, let's get into my final thoughts of the actual premise of Kirby Superstar on the Super Nintendo / you know, Kirby's Fun Pack in Europe. It's actually a pretty interesting game altogether, because it's more accurately, this is when Sonic Maker Collection exists, but in forms of the classical games or in compilation games, and especially noticeable after Super Mario All-Stars released during the likes of also for the Super Nintendo, except that Super Mario All-Stars came out in 1993 instead of like 1996, unlike the ones in this game. But even then though, that's the only major difference between, you know, Super Mario All-Stars and Kirby Superstar or Kirby's Fun Pack is that, you know, Super Mario All-Stars usually contains 4 games all in one cartridge. Well, at least if you want to count Super Mario World, if you manage to obtain both Super Mario All-Stars and Super Mario World Double Pack all in one cartridge. And also, during the likes of Kirby Superstar, you normally get yourselves 8 special games, like normally 8 for the forms of the main 6 of the actual main ones, and 2 from the side games, which is Megaton Punch and Samurai Kirby. Well, they've only missing out just only 1 game, but in forms of the arena, but in forms of what I would classify for technically calls it 9 games, because, you know, the arena was listed. So let's see if I can able to actually get ourselves an ultimate victory right there. Although I will admit though, right from the start though, is the fact that the Super Nintendo version of Kirby Superstar does have a little bit of a shared unbalanced issues, so I might as well able to actually grind with this kinds of stuff. I missed aiming on that. I'm assuming I lost this round. Oh well, that's all I usually can get from Megaton Punch. I actually do really enjoy this particular minigame, although I still managed to beat him for 10 points or something like that because of, well, simply but the other opponents didn't do as well as compared to me. So anyways, Now let's move on to the final sub-game before we end this Let's Play off. So let's go with Samurai Kirby. Press any button immediately when you see exclamation mark. And much like how it does in Megaton Punch, you can just simply play this up to 1 player or 2 players, whatever you want to do. And even then, though, you can play up with your 2 player if you manage to bring your friend along with you. But let's get started with Samurai Kirby. So basically, like how it does it in Megaton Punch, you do have to deal with 3 different difficulties, except rather than just number-based, instead it's just alphabetical based. Like, you got Beginner, Novice, and Expert. Throughout the majority of that particular Samurai Kirby, this particular minigame feels remarkably similar to Quick Draw from the forms of Kirby's Adventure, except rather than just dealing around with the actual Western feel to it, and even pop guns as a result, but instead it usually takes place in somewhere around Asia, and somewhere in China, I think. But even then, all you have to do is basically just try to conquer through every single foes you can do. But unfortunately, I got owned by Cook Kansamke, which I really do apologize for the pronunciation of that name very well. But let's try Beginner to see how there's some major differences anyway. So, yeah, I'll get into more overall of the actual game. You should definitely recommend Kirby Superstar if you manage to able to actually get this on, well, unfortunately, though, we've only got about, I would classify for saying 4 more days left until the Wii Shop channel service is shutting down. And, also, judging by the fact that, well, to be more specifically, the Wii points, mind you, for that particular system. But you can now get this on the forms of Nintendo Switch. No, not Nintendo Switch. I'm thinking of something else. You can now get this on Nintendo Wii U. Or even if your American audiences out there, you can now simply get this on Kirby's Dream Collection on Nintendo Wii. Or you can get this on the Super Nintendo Classic Mini, whatever you wanted to, for HD experience. So, yeah, it's a pretty enjoyable game all in all. There are some unbalanced issues I might as well pointing out. It's the fact that, well, first off, I found the damage output in some of these obstacles everywhere can get a little bit out of hand. And especially noticeable of how the fact that, well, the tutorial segments is going all over the place. Well, I do understand by the actual casual players, but it really gets on my nerves every time when I jump into the next game or something, which even though that's a little bit of a nitpicking I might find. But apart from that, some people usually think that Kirby Superstar is easily the best Kirby games of the old school franchise, which I would classify for agreement, because even then though, it wasn't until when 2008 or 2009 in Europe, naturally, oh god, I got tired, that's a little bit stink. Because of that, I was a little bit thrown off by the fact with the timing aspect of this particular game, so I need to concentrate here. Ah, I lost by wheelie. I think Expert is easily the toughest difficulty, I think. But there you go, that concludes Samurai Kirby, and that pretty much does it by the forms of Kirby Superstar, aka Kirby's Fun Pack for the Super Nintendo. And you should definitely recommend this particular game if you ever have the Super Nintendo physical cartridge, or to simply get the Super Nintendo Classic Mini if you whatever you wanted to, or simply you can now actually buy this on the Wii U eShop downloads. Although unfortunately though, as I mentioned earlier, you guys only got about like 3 more days left until the Wii point system on the Nintendo Wii shop channel was now going to be ending off. So even then though, it might be too late to get that version now. So even then though, definitely recommend Kirby Superstar. You should definitely check that out. So that's it for that Let's Play of Kirby Superstar. So this is me, Duffy, from the likes of the Maxi Toys. And join us next time by the forms of the Kirby Marathon continuation. We're going to be moving on to Kirby's Dream Land 3. aka the final game on the Kirby franchise to be released on the Super Nintendo in a 16-bit console before the new generation comes. Well, to be more specifically for the Nintendo 64 for that one point. So, okay, I just want to point things out right from the start because I just want to show you something. Is that if you see on the file selection screen that actually represents, excuse me, they actually represent 6 stars. Means there are game scenarios and the EX represents arena, and as you can tell, I've already got 100% completion, means I've pretty much gone through everything. And also there's a pretty cool imagery too, by the forms of fight. I think that's how the influence of how the fact that with the arena itself or something, or maybe I don't know. It all depends though, really. So, anyways, thank you so much guys for watching of our Let's Play of Kirby Superstar, aka Kirby's Fun Pack, aka Kirby of the Stars. Super Deluxe in Japan. So I hope you guys enjoyed it, and until then, see you guys then for Kirby Stream Land 3. See you guys then.